Did you watch Andrew Bridgen's debate about the excess deaths? He's convinced that many of the excess deaths that we are experiencing at the moment are due to the vaccine, or the vaccines, because of course there's more than one. But during this week, around the same time that that debate was going on, I did notice a couple of stories in the press about the cost of being under-vaccinated and the many thousands of lives that may have been lost, or hospitalisations that may have happened due to people being either not vaccinated at all or unvaccinated. You didn't get your booster, didn't get your latest booster. That apparently may have cost many lives. So even if there is an excess in deaths at the moment for whatever reason, according to the articles I've read, if people had been vaccinated more, not missed their boosters, maybe many lives would have been saved. That's what I read in an article this week. So who's to say without the vaccine it wouldn't be worse, or some people wouldn't be dead who are now alive because they took it. And Andrew Bridgen seems convinced that it's all due to the vaccine, but as I mentioned, there were different vaccines and we did have a problem with some of them. AstraZeneca showed that you were at risk of blood clots, so they removed it for people under 30, then they removed it for people under 40. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine that was meant to be one shot only, that also got removed. So it's not as simple as saying, well, I'm pro-vaccine or I'm an anti-vaxxer. The point was made in the debate. Vaccines that were shown to have a problem were removed, or action was taken to reduce the amount that they were being used. So maybe it's just that the Pfizer vaccine was the best one and we should all have been taking that one because it was shown to be safe and effective and better than the AstraZeneca, foreign sounding name, one. Yeah, the Pfizer one I think was the best one. So they're probably the best company to trust. Andrew Bridgen also quoted a journalist who, regarding child vaccines, acknowledged that there was a risk and maybe a few children would die from the vaccine, but you would save more than you lost. Therefore it's a good thing. And I suppose that is a good thing, isn't it? If you kill 10 but save 100, whether it's children, adults or sheep or whatever, that is a good thing, isn't it? It reminds me of the psychopathy test, where they ask a psychopath whether they would push someone onto the tracks of a train and kill them if it meant saving the lives of people on the train, or people that the train was about to crash into. And a psychopath will very easily make that decision and say, yes, of course you could. Killing one to save 10 is easy, it's correct. Whereas our nature, if we're normal people, if we're not psychopaths, is to be repulsed by the notion of killing one. But if you are killing one to save 10 in a health context, that's a good thing, isn't it? Or should it be every man for himself? Everyone should assess their own risk, their own potential harm, because we're not all at the same risk. And I know that with the pandemic, children were at lower risk than adults, certain children were at lower risk than other children, maybe there's your argument for, well, it would be parents deciding whether or not to give it to their child based on the risk, because if you just blanket give it to everyone, yes, you might save more lives than you lose otherwise, but within that there will be people who are not at risk of the disease and were at risk from the medicine. So I don't know. Andrew Bridgen seems to have a bee in his bonnet about this one. He got kicked out of the Tory party because of it, and it's his chosen hill to die on, it seems. Hopefully not suddenly.
The actual problem with excess deaths started in spring 2021 with the jab rollout, and there was a stepwise rise in ambulance calls for life-threatening emergencies at exactly the same times. Hospitals started to be overwhelmed also for the first time, and the number of people unable to work because of long-term sickness started to rise. Even mayday calls from aircraft rose. Are we meant to think that this is all a coincidence? When we know that these injections cause a range of serious adverse events, especially cardiac events. No, the excess deaths are the tip of this very ugly iceberg, and we haven't even mentioned the world-shaking scandal of jabbing people who'd already had COVID, which, at a stroke, almost entirely demolishes the credibility of our public health policies at this period. We completely ignored natural immunity. That one fact ought to be a red flag of gigantic proportions, but no one's listening. And I haven't got time to discuss the fact that jab was not pulled when it became clear that an incredible 1 in 800 doses administered led to serious adverse events and consequences. The rotavirus vaccine was pulled entirely after causing an adverse event rate of 1 in 10,000. For the 2009 swine flu vaccine, it was an adverse event of 1 in 35,000 that were harmed, and it was then pulled off the market. The COVID jab is still being pushed, and it's seriously harming people, inevitably at a rate much higher than 1 in 800, because most people are being exposed to multiple doses of the vaccine with the same risk, adverse event risk, at each dose. Thalidomide, syphilis treatment, all these infamous, appalling, shattering medical scandals are dwarfed by the iceberg under the water that is the medical scandal we're currently living through, the experimental COVID-19 so-called vaccines. And it took 11 years after the drug was withdrawn in 1961 for thalidomide scandal was first raised in Parliament. 11 years after the thalidomide scandal, before the word thalidomide could even be mentioned in the chamber of the House of Commons. Well, Sir Gary, I'm not going to let that happen this time. That's why I fought so hard to raise this issue in Parliament at a cost to my reputation, my career, and the financial security of my family. The public inquiry should be urgently looking at this issue. Instead, they're wasting taxpayers' money obsessing over WhatsApp messages while people are dying. As if that isn't bad enough, so as already shared with you, we learnt this week that the vaccine module has been postponed indefinitely for no good reason. It's as if the inquiry is so desperate not to find fault that they can't even look at what's happened with the vaccines. We need transparency. Dr. Claire Craig, co-chair of the Heart Group, has been doggedly pursuing the UK Health Security Agency for their record-level data on dosage, dates and deaths for a year. This is the data that could sort out this issue once and for all. They admit they've got it. The MHRA admit that all this data has been released to Pfizer, AstraZeneca and Moderna. Yet they claim they cannot anonymise it for public release to the public. A failure to release this data makes it look like there is definitely something to hide. A recent poll in the USA shows that more than half of the public think the vaccines are responsible for a significant number of deaths. If there was nothing to hide, they would certainly release this data for analysis, anonymised, to stop the upswell of legitimate concern. The latest response from the Information Commissioner's office is that Dr. Claire Craig's got to wait another 6 months at least before a case officer will be assigned to this issue. This is not acceptable, Sir Gary. They've released our health data to Big Pharma, but they won't release it to us. The record data, level data must be released. It is really too much to ask. Is it really too much to ask that the British public be given the same level of access to the relevant data given to Big Pharma companies those actually responsible for this debacle. Corporations that carefully secured immunity from all legal liability, or in this country, indemnity from the government before dangerously and negligently experimenting on the health of our nation and the world. We're witnesses to the greatest medical scandal in living memory, the consequential fallout in trust, public opinion, and public confidence is only just beginning. Continued attempts to shut down debate, flatten dissent, and obstruct independent analysis can only delay the eventual collective shame. It's going to be a reckoning, and we're going to have to try and rebuild trust in our health services, in our media, and in our politics. And we haven't even started on that journey. So Gary, before I was expelled from the Conservative Party for voicing my concerns over these experimental vaccines and the harms that I believe they cause, I met with a senior member of the party who, after listening to my concerns about the vaccines and NG163, the midazolam and morphine scandal, told me quite calmly, Andrew, there is currently no political appetite for your views on the vaccines. There may well be in 20 years' time, and you're probably going to be proven right. But in the meantime, you need to bear in mind you're taking on the most powerful vested interest in the world, with all the personal risk for you that will entail. So, Gary, I refuse to bow to that threat. And as they say, the rest is history. People have alleged that I'm spouting conspiracy theories. Well, I think it is a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy against the science. It's a conspiracy of silence. And, Sir Gary, it's a conspiracy against the people. And I will have none of it.
Yeah. Very much.